So a common question I get from students is, how do I blank? So if we think about that with like common digital literacy tasks, questions might be, how do I bold this sentence? Or how do I take a screenshot and then insert an image into an email? Just kind of common tasks, common questions I'll get. I used to be a math teacher before I got into kind of ed tech and distance learning. And in a math class, I think the question we get is, hey, show me the steps. What are the steps to solve this problem? And to me, that's a form of dependent learning. It's dependent learning in the sense that students are kind of looking to the teacher to define the learning path. Like, here are the steps you take to solve the problem. Here are the steps you take to finish this set. I think the challenge we experience with the show me the steps moniker is that the reality of 21st century instruction is just significantly more complex. So by that, I mean, if we think about just digital literacy, there are things changing way too quickly. So let me give you an example. If I show a student the steps for how to use Google Maps, like here's how you enter an address, here's how you get biking directions or public transit directions. Like, it's very possible, if not likely, that those steps are going to change, and maybe pretty soon, in the sense that Google is always rolling out new features and new updates. So even the look and feel of Google Maps can change. So again, if I kind of like show a student step by step, that step-by-step process may change so quickly that if they like memorize the steps, it's not going to serve them long term as new features are rolled out and as that technology change. And I find that to be even more so when we look at, more so the case when we look at like the high set or the GED or the task. The content, the rigor, the standards are evolving so quickly and so significantly that a step-by-step mindset is just not going to be able to cover all the content that needs to be covered to properly prepare a student to be digitally resilient or to pass the high set or the GED. So in what will maybe be the most obvious statement that I make today, I think our goal is to nurture independent learners. So an independent learner is someone that can set goals, they can find resources, they can ask for help, they can know when they need help and know how to ask for help. They can reflect on their learning experiences and how to continuously improve them. And they can essentially build skills on their own, both like independently and collaboratively. So to borrow a buzzword, we want to try to future-proof our students where they can continuously build new skills across a lifetime. So a natural question obviously occurs is, yeah, of course, Joey, like we want our students to be independent learners. How do we do that? Like, what's the best way to accomplish that? And today, I'd like to suggest one potential answer to that. And I want to emphasize potential because my use cases for this are small, and I think it's too early to establish best practices. And so you're going to hear me say that a lot today. But before we get to that, I want to ask a question for the group. What's something you're trying to learn today? This could be anything. It doesn't have to be professional. It could be something at work, something at home, something you're trying to do with your kids. What's a new skill you're trying to learn right now? Darlene, awesome. Thank you for being the first person to reply via chat. So we hear French. We're trying to learn French or Luganda. We are trying to, and I'm hoping people will kind of continue filling up the chat. What are you trying to learn today? What's a new skill you're trying to build? Perfect a pour over coffee. Gosh, what a lifelong pursuit. A Tom Petty song, cool, musician, trying to learn music, how to crochet, how to knit a sweater. Thank you, awesome. I appreciate everybody. Now, to continue that, so still in the chat, how are you going about learning that? So when you say you're trying to learn the perfect pour over, when you're trying to learn accounting or video animation, just throw out there some strategies. What steps are you taking to try to learn it? Awesome, Glenn, thank you for being the first person applied. YouTube, search for resources, knowing how to Google, online classes, searching. I see YouTube from Jeff 3 times. That's beautiful. ChatGPT, that's funny. Talk to experts, creating a course and module. Sweet. That is so awesome. Okay, so we have these skills we're trying to learn. And one thing I want to kind of emphasize is look at how all of our peers are trying to learn things. We are using YouTube. We're talking to experts. We're looking up tutorials. We're taking classes online. We are making mistakes and learning from those mistakes. And that reflects my learning experience too. So for example, I'm trying to learn how to play piano. I also am trying to get better at like spreadsheet programming so I can write like scripts in Google Sheets and things like that. And so whether I'm learning a new song on piano or I am trying to build a new formula in Google Sheets, I follow a pretty similar path, which is like I'm going to watch a YouTube video. I have a few colleagues that are experts, whether it's a musician or a programmer. I look up tutorials on message boards. I see what other people have tried. I try things myself. I make mistakes. I learn from those mistakes. Put another way, it's a messy process. It's a fluid process. It's dynamic. It's evolving. It's evolving as I go. So the question I'm asking myself right now at this stage in my career is, this is a process we all do all the time. Our students do it all the time too. They do it when they're learning how to use their kids' apps so they can support them in school. They're learning how to balance their own budgets. They're learning how to build diets for themselves. Like our students, our colleagues, everybody goes through this process where we kind of take messy or fluid paths to learning. So my question is, how do we bring that into the classroom? How do we take the kind of informal or formal learning we do everywhere else, and how do we bring that into our classroom to help our students build those skills? So it's not me telling them step by step how to solve a problem, but they're developing those kind of independent learning skills in an academic setting. So how do I create a course? How do I create a lesson? And how do I interact with students in that course in a way that helps them learn how to set goals and know how to ask for help and look things up online and talk to experts and talk to peers? Because that's what I want them to be able to do across their lifetime, within the program, within my classroom, after they leave the program. And as I talked about, I don't think we have enough time to teach everything. So what I'm wondering is, like, what little role can I play in my students' lives to help them learn how to be a lifelong learner in the digital age? And this is what kind of got me thinking about online learning. So for context, I helped start an online program in 2014. We've been doing distance learning forever. And this is what our classes looked like originally. And I would suggest that this is a traditional online class structure, which is, it's like kind of watch this video, read this article once, post to the discussion board, and then like reply twice to someone else's messages. And I'm not necessarily saying that was good or bad. It's just what it was originally. And that's how we built our first online classes. But the challenge here is kind of obvious. So for example, if I have students read an article that's good for student A might not be a great article for student B. Same thing with videos. Like everyone kind of needs different resources and different kinds of supports. And when I'm learning something new, like we looked at, there's no one that kind of builds this learning path for me. Whereas students log into our courses, and it's just like, here's how you learn. Watch this, read this, comment here, and then magically you'll have learned. And so what I'm kind of starting to wonder is like, hey, are we restricting the skills our students can build based on the structure of our lessons, based on the structure of our online classes? Because I look at an online class like this, and it's not really that messy. It's not fluid. It's not adapting to what the student needs. And it doesn't feel like it's nurturing those independent learning skills. I do think it's helpful at this point to emphasize why online learning 1.0 looked like this. And I think there's a couple of reasons. And this is me just kind of suggesting, and I'm curious to hear if you agree or if you'd push back. First of all, I think we built online classes in the early days based on how we were taught growing up, which was kind of like the sage on the stage. There's a teacher at the front of the room. They're going to tell you what to learn. They're going to tell you how to learn it. And there will be a step-by-step process. So we built online classes that kind of looked like those traditional models of education. And then secondly, I think we were also pretty limited by the tools themselves. So Blackboard, Moodle, Canvas in their early stages didn't have a lot of design options. They kind of had like these containers with modules where you could like insert a link, insert a YouTube video, and then kind of sequence them accordingly. It wasn't easy to design something that looked different, that felt different, and that nurtured a different kind of learning process. So what I want to do for the last, I'm thinking there's 10 minutes left in the 20 minutes total. Rachel can correct me on that, is talk about what I'm trying in my own practice. And this is once again where I really want to emphasize, I don't think this is best practices. What I hope to do today is to introduce to you the questions that I'm asking and how I'm trying to answer those questions in hopes of inspiring a conversation. I think online learning is too new. Online learning in adult education is new. And I think like the tools that we have have changed so significantly in the last few years that it's too early to define like what is a best practice. So I really want to emphasize like these are just things I'm trying, and I'm curious to hear back about what you think. So I'm going to share a course that I just built and that I've facilitated in the last year. To give you some context, first of all, this was a professional development course for adult educators. So off the bat, this is not something I've tried with adult students yet. And I would love to kind of talk to someone if they want to maybe partner and explore ways to pilot this. But first and foremost, what you're about to see was done with adult educators, not with adult students. The audience was 61 adult education career navigators at WIOA funded agencies. And the focus of the course was digital skills that kind of helps them become better career navigators. So how can they build digital proficiency in a way that enhances their ability to offer career navigation support? And so this was a targeted class. We focused on 4 discrete apps. That was Google Forms, Google Sheets, Screencastify, and social media. And so I want to kind of showcase how I tried to build a lesson and a unit that nurtured independent learning, that was a little more messy and a little more fluid and a little less linear. So I will put this link into chat because I want everyone to be able to look at it as well. You can sample the lesson there, and when you open that link, it'll look something like this. And so I just kind of want to show you what that looks like. But you can play around with that, and I'm going to do a tour of that in the breakout room in case anyone wants to join there. So I want to come back to the slide deck here, while also you have the link and you can kind of play around with it. And I'll kind of talk through what I like about this class structure. Okay, so essentially there's 4 things that I like about this class structure, and I'll kind of talk through step by step what each of those are. So first of all, it's competency-based and iterative. It nurtures peer learning. It provides agency for learners. And then lastly, there's an emphasis on curation. And I'll talk about what each of those look like and how I think it's an attempt to emulate nonlinear learning. Okay, so what do I mean by competency-based? First of all, it is very much focused on accomplishing a goal. So in this module, the task was to create a Google form. There's like a rubric for what that form needed to include, but that's it. That's the only thing we had navigators focus on, is this is your goal. The path you take there was up to you. It was not like you need to watch this tutorial and then complete this class and then follow this step-by-step process. It was like, here's a goal. Now it's up to you to try to figure out how to get to that goal. And we're here to support you through that. So again, it's not the teacher really saying, read this, read that. It's like, here's the goal. So the first thing I'll emphasize that it was competency-based, which is it's not about completing step-by-step. It's not time on task. It's not percentage of completion or percentage of modules visited. It's at the end of this module, have you completed this goal? So the way I see that connected to messy learning is that like, hey, I have a goal, which is to like learn how to make the perfect pour over coffee. I have a goal, which is to pass the GED math. I have a goal, which is to build a Google form. Now I have to figure out how to get there. So step 1, competency-based was essential. Okay, number 2, agency. There were multiple different paths given to complete that task. So what I want to emphasize is that none of this was required. If somebody just wanted to build a custom form, they could ignore the rest of the content and they could jump in and take creative control over it and kind of present the form however they wanted. But we obviously know that our students and our peer educators are not always so confident in like trying new things digitally, which is okay. So there was a second option, which is, hey, if you want a little more support, here's a step-by-step process. So at this point, it's up to the learner to decide for themselves. Do I want to try this on my own? Do I want to try this with support? And that I think kind of nurtures that agency that's needed for independent learning, which is like, hey, I'm trying to learn this coffee brewing method. Can I do it on my own? Do I need a little bit of support? Maybe there's somewhere in between. Maybe I try both. Okay, number 3, peer learning was core to this class. And I think, again, another obvious statement, obviously humans are social learners. There isn't necessarily one right way to solve a problem, especially when we're talking about the 21st century. So if you think about a Google form, there's like tons of different ways you can create a Google form. There isn't a right way to solve it. And as strange as it may sound, that's also true in our math classes, in our ELA classes. Like there's lots of different ways to solve problems. And so what we tried to do with our synchronous time is essentially the things that can't be done alone. So there's asynchronous content, which is like, hey, try to build a Google form. Here's some resources. Here's where you can explore and try some new things. But when we come together, we're going to pitch ideas to each other, give each other feedback on your draft forms, and really talk and learn from each other. So I think the connection here is that knowing how to use digital tools to ask for help is essential. It's necessary in the 21st century. So we have a course design that sets people up to try things on their own, and then also have dedicated space for where they can get help from the teacher, where they can help from peers and learn how to ask for help. So we structure the meetups in a way in which we show them good ways to ask for help, how to share your screen, how to share screenshots, and so forth. And so the key there is we're trying to model like, hey, it's good to be vulnerable. It's good to say, I don't know. It's good to ask for help and make mistakes and learn from each other. And then lastly, I mentioned curation at the start. Curation's a big part of this because like the internet is so overwhelming. There's so many resources out there, and that's got to be even more so for our students that often enter our classes with limited literacy and limited digital literacy. And so for those students that kind of get overwhelmed, I can't just be like, hey, if you do get stuck, go on the internet and figure it out. Like that's overwhelming for some students. And so the key that I did here is I also organized resources that are high quality. So if a student gets stuck, like, hey, here's the module 1 task. I'm trying to build a Google form. If they get stuck, I say, go check out the tutorials, go check out the related reading, ask some of your peers in the class, and then come to me. So as the teacher, I'm not really telling them what to do as much as curating high quality resources and then helping them learn how to pick and choose which resources are helpful. So I'm there with support. It's not about just kind of dropping them into water to kind of sink or swim on their own. It's here's a goal, here are resources. Those resources are audited, high quality, and also here are your peers. Let's talk to each other and kind of learn from each other's experience. So I want to try to kind of talk through quickly some of the results. So first of all, completion rates were very high, pretty much had a nearly 100% completion rate in every module. I also did a pre and post survey in which they were asked the exact same questions. At the end of each module, they were kind of given like, hey, this module helped me, 85, 90, 100% said this module helped me. And then here's that pre and post survey. So before the class, I am confident in my ability to use Google Forms or Screencastify. And we saw like over a whole point of growth on average using like a 1 to 5 Likert scale. And so we were pretty confident that worked well for this specific audience. But what I want to emphasize is on these select anecdotes. These 2 quotes are great. Read them on your own. But what I want to emphasize is this last one. One of the navigators said, for me, there were a lot of gaps in the instruction. I had to spend a lot of time hunting and trying to figure things out. And I honestly think they meant this as a negative thing in some way. But I took this as like the strongest endorsement because that's what we want our students to do. There's always going to be gaps in instruction for any number of reasons. There's too much content to cover. Every student is different and they need different resources and different support. So the fact that they had to spend time and they felt that they had the support needed to do it, to me, felt like a strong endorsement because this to me is key. This is the attitude we're trying to nurture with all of our students. Excuse me. So if I were to try to summarize, here's my current 21st century kind of theory of action for teachers. And again, this is what I'm trying. I don't want to say this is best practices. I'm going to answer some of the questions I see in a minute. These are just questions I'm asking, and this is what I'm suggesting as a potential solution. My hope is some of you will come into the breakout room and tell me all the reasons this won't work, because that's how we're going to learn together. That's how we'll grow as a community. So first of all, 21st century teachers curate. They find good resources and they organize them in a way that's easy to find for their students. So when your students get stuck, they have a bank of resources they know they can draw from that are high quality, that are adult learner friendly, that are translated into other languages if needed. Secondly, we motivate. We help to kind of challenge our students and say, here's how you set goals. Here's how you break them down into smaller parts so you can feel small wins along the way. Our role is to coach, nurture, motivate students. And then lastly, also to help them iterate. So students try something and then we pair them with each other so they can give each other feedback. and then they revise it once, and then we give them feedback as the kind of instructor, facilitator, subject matter expert. So through that process, we are helping set a goal, provide quality resources, motivate them to reach that goal, and then give them the kind of peer support and instructor support needed to kind of reach that goal in a way that works for them.